Yeah, first and foremost, public relations puts you in the news. Very simple. You are in the media. And whether you are in the media being featured by professional journalists who went to college to study journalism or homegrown journalists who have a platform, you are reaching potential audiences, potential buyers, potential clients. And that's what's key about public relations is this relevance, consistency.
Welcome to Making Change with Your Money, a podcast that highlights the stories and strategies of women who experienced a big life transition and overcame challenges as they redefined financial success for themselves. Now here's your host, certified financial planner, Laura Rotter.
I am so excited to have as my guest today, Andrea Pass. Andrea is the expert at booking clients on podcast interviews. I can certainly attest to that. She's booked several clients on this podcast, as well as features, quotes, and reviews in digital media, broadcast, print, and more. Andrea creates and implements public relations campaigns in a wide range of categories, including consumer products, lifestyle, business to business, education, health, wellness, fitness, beauty, food, authors, nonprofits, and more. Andrea's strength in relationships, coupled with her knowledge of the ever-growing media base, results in securing top-tier targeted media placements to increase brand awareness, reputation management, and sales for established businesses and growing entrepreneurs alike. So welcome, Andrea, to the Making Change with Your Money podcast.
Hi, Laura. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm looking forward to our conversation. And I'm going to start like I always do with the same question, which is, what was money like in your family growing up?
Money was tight. We lived in a row house that my sister and I shared what was, I guess, the primary bedroom, because that was a little bigger. My parents had the middle bedroom, and my brother's bedroom was basically a closet. They had to take the door off because a door wouldn't open or into the bedroom or it would hit the bed. The linen closet was in his room. So it was basically a bed with a dresser and a linen closet. So we had this very, nice little townhouse, a row house. And so everything was tight, but we enjoyed life.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the first planned community in the United States. Radburn is a section of Fair Lawn, New Jersey in North Jersey. And in the 1920s, this community was built so that you wouldn't cross any streets to get to the parks, the schools, or the shopping. It was all on a park system where the kitchen faced the street. So the woman who was cooking would see the deliveries or the mail, and the living rooms faced the parks. So you would look out your living room and you would see the park and kids bicycle riding and playing. And so it was really a unique place to grow up because you'd bicycle everywhere. And of course, modernization, lots of streets came into being, but community was very, very prevalent in Radburn. So if you ever research Radburn in Fair Lawn, New Jersey, I just went on a walking tour of Radburn a few weeks ago, and I learned so much more about where I grew up.
Do you know how your parents heard about it or how you came to be living there?
Actually, my aunt, my mother's sister, had moved to Radburn in Fair Lawn. And so when my mother and father were moving out of Kew Gardens, Queens, New York.
I grew up in Queens.
Yeah, I was in Kew Gardens in Queens. And so my parents were moving there because they knew of it because of my aunt. So I grew up with my cousins just a few blocks away, which was very, very nice. And my kids and my sister, we live in the same town, as do my parents, not the Radburn section anymore, but we're all right near each other. I went to a street fair the other day and ran into my cousin. So it's very family oriented.
Isn't that wonderful? I mean, clearly, or I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like, yes, you were aware that financial resources weren't abundant, and yet that wasn't important because family and relationships and community was. How do you react to that statement?
And that's the truth, because you didn't realize, because you still were able to get the ice cream from the ice cream truck. And, you didn't realize that it was so difficult because you had your bicycle and you had your kickball and you had your friends and you went to the pool because you lived in this community that they had to pay association dues. So you were allowed to use the pool. And so you didn't think anything of it, growing up, that things were tight. But I think it was a generational thing, because my parents' generation had to constantly save. They were worried. They were worried about the rainy day. And I'm not saying that we don't worry about money in today's world, because we do. But we're able to say, hey, let's go on that vacation, or, let's go ahead and have that nice dinner.
But so how was the worry communicated to you by your parents? Did they say specifically, we can't take vacation, or we can't?
No.
How were you aware that
we always took vacation? We always took vacation. We would go up to the Catskill Mountains hotels for a few days. And there was another place up in Connecticut. It was called Clark Kent. I still remember it. And if you saw the movie Dirty Dancing, it was very similar to that, the bungalows. And then you go to the main house for dinner, and the kids ate in one room and the adults ate in another room, and you met all the kids and you hung out. And so we did those things, and we would go to the Pennsylvania Dutch country, or we would do a car trip, and we would stay in a hotel, and we'd have Tang and little boxes of cereal. We'd fight over who got the sugar pops, in the hotel room. We never thought there was an issue because we didn't not do.
So what I'm hearing from you, Andrea, is you're looking back and reflecting on the size of your house, the sharing of the room, and that clearly money was tight. And yet it wasn't something that was really communicated or felt. It's only looking back that you're seeing it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think we grew up during a different period of time where we didn't have social media. We didn't have lifestyles of the rich and famous. They're just, we're social beings, we compare ourselves to what we see, and what we see was similar to our lives. So
and I think that today you look at what matters. I don't drive the newest car at all. I don't drive the most expensive car, but I have a car and it's fine. And I go out to dinner, and we're always meeting up with friends. And 90% of the time we'll go to a restaurant that's BYO, and we'll bring a bottle of wine, because that's, and we'll go back to someone's house for dessert and coffee. And all of our friends, we all do the same thing. And so we're not spending, but we're not skimping.
I love that. It's you're spending according to what you value, which is spending time with friends, having experiences, and not things, not spending on things.
I think that there's too much stuff. And I know one of these days we're going to go through the attic, and we're going to go through the basement. I'm still going to go through my closet and get rid of things, but it's just not a priority.
Right. So what role did education play in your family? Where was that in the spectrum of family values?
Education was always important. My father graduated from college. My mother did not graduate from college, and it was a different era. Mom didn't work until I think I was in junior high, and then she got a part-time job. And that was around the time that she got a driver's license.
Oh, wow.
So she didn't even have a driver's license. But, we had to study. We had to do well at school. And when I was going off to college, they didn't know from looking at a college. What did they know from this? Dad went to a city school and he took the subway to get there. What did they know from going off to college and getting a dorm room and then getting an apartment and the expenses involved in all of that? So, but it was always important to do our best and do what we love doing. And so my parents never said, don't do this. I was going to be a journalist. I thought I would go to UCLA. Not that I even knew what UCLA stood for at the time, but I thought, I'm going to go to California and I'm going to study journalism. And I wrote a column in a local weekly newspaper when I was a senior in high school, all about things at the high school. And when I went off to college, to a New Jersey State College, and I studied radio, TV, film, and thought I was going to be a broadcaster. But I was always the PR person of every committee. And, so my parents always just supported whatever direction we chose to take in our education. I have a younger sister and a younger brother. My brother is also in public relations, so that's kind of funny. My sister is not, but we all did our best, and our parents always supported us.
So important, and not to take it for granted, which I hear that you don't, because not everyone has supportive people in their lives and supportive parents. So what was your path? You graduated and you immediately went into public relations?
When I graduated college, I was going to be the next Dan Rather. I was going to be a broadcast journalist, and I was going to work for CBS because CBS was number one at the time. So off I went in my little navy blue suit with the shirt that had like the tie attached to it.
Yes. Oh my God.
And the brown briefcase that had my initials engraved in it, my little navy blue pumps. And I went to CBS. I'm tough stuff. I go in there and they're waiting for me, sure. And they said, please take a typing test, because women had to take a typing test. Well, I speak quickly. Therefore, I type quickly. So I did very well on this typing test, but there were no positions in the broadcast area for CBS at the time. CBS owned a number of magazines, including Woman's Day magazine. And I got a job being an administrative assistant in the advertising, trafficking, and layout department of Woman's Day. 5 weeks later, I'm promoted and I'm no longer an administrative assistant. I'm actually doing the advertising, trafficking, and layout of the magazine.
Wow.
And I'm learning, and I'm measuring, and this ad should go on this page, and this contract says this, and this ad can't be within 7 pages of another competing of that product, and all the things you had to follow, until the freeze lifted in the broadcast area. And I was able to get a job being a media relations person in the CBS radio division nationally, and did that for a number of years until I went over to the PR agency side of things. Now, did I interview to be one of Dan Rather's assistants? You bet I did. Did I get the second interview? You bet I did. Did I go? No. I had this epiphany. I did not want to be someone's assistant. I was doing work. As a PR person, I was writing press releases, putting together press kits, pitching stories, going to press events, supervising photo shoots. I was doing things. I didn't want to be someone's assistant. And no disrespect, everyone has their path. It just wasn't mine. And so I decided to go the PR route and got a job at a public relations firm in New Jersey, moved around a bit to PR firms in New Jersey, eventually a PR firm in LA. I worked remotely. And 6 years ago, Andrea Pass Public Relations was born. And I've never been happier.
Wow. So what is it that you like about PR, Andrea? What are the skills that you're using and that drew you to the field to begin with and keeps you in the field?
Relationships. I think that's the most exciting thing, is to meet journalists or homegrown journalists, get to know them, and help the client get interviewed by that media outlet. So whether it's print, whether it's broadcast, whether it's online, whatever kind of media it is, finding a way to get the client featured so that someone else is talking about that client instead of them talking about themselves. People listen more when someone else talks about you. When you're talking about yourself, everyone is, well, that's an ad, they paid for that. They're talking about themselves. But if you're a guest somewhere or you're featured somewhere, there's an article quoting you or reviewing your book or your product or your service, then you're an expert. And for me, that's exciting. So every single time an interview comes out, or a story or a review or a product or whatever it is I'm working on, I'm like a little kid in a candy shop. Look at this. This press placement came out, and that came out because of me. And so I love PR, and my lane is press coverage.
Was that always your lane?
In the PR field, yes. In the PR field. I love securing media. So whether I'm securing something on the Today Show or I'm securing something in the Monmouth, New Jersey local journal, it doesn't matter. Whether it is podcast or national radio show, it doesn't matter, because every single media placement is 1 + 1 + 1. And you don't know who's absorbing that content. And so today, the person who absorbs that content might be your buyer, might be your future client or customer. And so you need to be out there and relevant and consistent. So those future clients, customers can know what you're up to, can see that you're relevant. Not, oh, there was a story written about me 15 years ago. Well, okay, who cares? But what's happening today? What's relevant for tomorrow? And so by handling public relations for a wide range of clients, from authors to consumer products to nonprofits to service-based companies, I'm keeping them relevant.
And given that you don't seem to focus on a niche, but really do have a wide base of clients, how do you stay in touch with the gatekeepers, if you will, at different media outlets?
I don't know everybody. I never claim to. Any public relations person who tells their clients they have all of these connections, they're making it up. We all can't know everybody, and things change constantly. Someone you know today at a newspaper is not there tomorrow. And so it's being, as I say on my LinkedIn profile, a PI in PR. I'm a private investigator, certainly public relations opportunity. And that's exactly what it is. It's researching, it's learning. I mean, today I was working on a project, and in my databases that I subscribe to, it was not giving me what I needed. So I did a Google search, old-fashioned Google search. I found media outlets that were in that market that are not in my databases. And I've already secured 2 interviews with 2 of those media outlets because I knew how to reach them, how to word it, how to get them interested in my subject line. And so that's part of the excitement of it. And I don't want to pigeonhole myself, just work on books or just work on housewares or only deal with, wellness coaches. It's fun to have a little of this and a little of that.
What do you find fun about it?
Oh gosh, learning something new, reaching new audiences, getting a story told. To me, it's enjoyable. And so I know I'm corny. If you love what you do, you've never worked a day in your life. And I love what I do.
And I have to agree that, when I worked on Wall Street, I never was working as an analyst on a specific industry. I, like you, really enjoyed being a generalist and learning about different industries and what the profitability is like and, what the overall environment affects supply and demand. It was really fascinating. So I too didn't really want to pigeon myself into a specific industry. So I get it. I'm curious what, if any, financial variables played a role as you decided to go out on your own rather than be an employee?
First and foremost, I didn't have to buy health insurance. I'm covered under my husband's health insurance. That is major. And I've said this especially to younger folks who are looking to become entrepreneurs. And I say, don't become an entrepreneur unless you can afford health insurance, because we live in a world that health insurance is expensive. So when I went out on my own, that wasn't something I had to worry about. In addition, I had a number of clients. I did not have a non-compete clause at my last agency. And I had a number of clients who kept saying to me, why aren't you going out on your own? Why aren't, you're bringing in all the business. I was bringing the business in. They were my contacts. I was doing all the work. And yet the person whose name was on the door was making the money. And so within establishing my LLC, I had a full slate of clients within 2-3 weeks. And it's been consistent. I'm about to celebrate 6 years, and it's been consistent. Thank you. There was one little dip at the end of 2022, not even during the pandemic. I was busy the whole time during the pandemic, but there was this fear of a recession and people didn't want to make a commitment. And it worked out for me wonderfully because I had some family issues I needed to deal with. So having a little more time. And then by January, I had a full slate of clients again. So everything happens for a reason. But I think that financially going into business and determining what are your rates? How are you making money? And the world has changed from the time that I started to today because of the fact that people are very cautious about their spend. I could do that myself. Well, no, you can't. Because if you could have done public relations yourself, you would have already. I'll get an intern. Well, an intern isn't going to have the experience of Andrea Pass public relations. So I say to people who, someone had a meeting with me and they had a budget and then suddenly they didn't have a budget anymore. I'm giving my proceeds of my book to charity. Well, you know what? Then use the proceeds for your PR and then donate to charity later. I'm not saying don't. I mean, we're big givers in my family. We're constantly writing checks to different charitable organizations. We always give back. But I think financially figuring out what do you need to thrive and at what stage of life are you? And I think where I'm at with Andrea Pass Public Relations, I'm actually taking less clients because I want more me time. And that's okay. I get the job done. And yet I could have time for a family or travel or meeting a colleague for a cup of coffee.
So what do you say to clients in terms of what PR can provide to them?
Yeah, first and foremost, public relations puts you in the news. Very simple. You are in the media. And whether you are in the media being featured by professional journalists who went to college to study journalism or homegrown journalists who have a platform, you are reaching potential audiences, potential buyers, potential clients. And that's what's key about public relations is this relevance, consistency, because you're saying no one knows about me. Well, why does no one know about you? That's something to think about. Oh, I published a book, but it didn't sell. It's on Amazon. Well, everything's on Amazon. Who knows about your book? Did your relatives all buy it on Amazon? Did they all leave reviews? Oh, I couldn't ask them to do that. Well, that's going to help your rating. So it's very interesting how people think they're going to be perceived if they're not out there talking to the media. And so I'm explaining that press coverage is vital in your marketing mix to grow your business, keep you relevant, and drive sales.
So I'm curious how you do that for yourself.
So I am a client of mine. And that's really important to me because if someone Googles me, they're going to see that I've been featured on podcasts, in magazines, in newspapers. I provide articles a few times a year to New Jersey Business Magazine. Yeah, I'm out there networking. I'm a speaker at different events. And so people will promote that I'm speaking at their events. And so I do PR for myself and I'm a client of mine. And I think that anyone who has an area of expertise, they should be their own client. It's kind of like, what was that old saying? The shoemaker's son doesn't have shoes or something like that. Well, why not? That would be the best salesperson if you're a shoemaker. Make sure your kids are wearing all your shoes and say, my dad, my mom made these shoes. So I think that's important when someone says, oh, I saw you featured here. How did that happen? Well, I'm a client of mine.
It's important for doing public relations. That would be the first thing I would look at is how you do it for yourself. Andrea, you mentioned that when small businesses were afraid of a recession, that they didn't want to make the commitment. What kind of commitment do you ask?
I ask for a 6-month commitment because public relations takes time. My differentiator in Andrea Pass Public Relations is that I get started yesterday. And so some PR firms, they're ramping up for 3, 4, 5 weeks. We have to ramp up. No, you're not paying me to ramp up. You're paying me to get the job done. So I tell you the materials that I need. And as soon as I have those materials, I can write my pitch. I'm reaching out to people I know, and then I'm reaching out to the things that you think are important. I always say to my client, what's on your top 10 wish list? Leaving off the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. Realistically, what's on your wish list? And some of them will say certain trade publications or certain local media or certain podcasts. These are on their list. And so I'm pitching those. So I get started immediately and clients will see that. But even when you're a guest on a podcast, that podcast may not run for 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, or even longer. So there's a lot of things that have to happen. And that's why I say a 6-month minimum, because it takes a while for things to happen. I might get an email back from a reporter 3 months after I've sent a pitch. If you're only hiring someone for 3 months, am I supposed to say, no, I don't represent them anymore. I'm not going to do this. I don't do that. I'm all about the relationships. And I just sent a press placement, came out today for a client that had stopped being a client about 2 months ago. We had done about 8 months. And, her budgets and her travel schedule, she decided, that's okay. I get it. I did a lot of press for her. It helped her with what she needed. But this came out. Of course, I serviced it to her. I'm all about the relationships. I want people who work with me to say that was a great experience. I would recommend Andrea. I'd want to work with Andrea again.
You're building long-term relationships and a referral base. So I totally get it. You mentioned that you have the experience of sort of knowing how to craft a pitch. Not that I want you to give away your secret sauce, but can you share what goes through your head when you're putting together a successful pitch?
What's different? What makes you stand out? I was talking to someone a few weeks ago, a new business, and they had a product that's a very common product. And I said, okay, what's your differentiator? What do you mean? I said, well, there's a lot of these out there. What makes you stand out? And she couldn't tell me. And I said, I need to know why you're different, because why would someone want to cover your story if your product isn't any different than every other one that's on the shelf? And I think I threw her for a loop, because I want to send out a pitch that has something different. If someone looks at it and says, oh, this is interesting. I'd like to talk to this person or cover this story. Also, my pitches are short and sweet. No one wants to read on and on. No attachments, for goodness sakes. Don't send me an attachment with 12 megabytes. I'm not reading it. You're crashing my computer. And so I'm conscious of the way that journalists want to be pitched. And I'm getting the pitch out there. And then I'm getting when I need to change it. But sometimes I don't need to change it because it's successful the way it is. So I'll stick with it for a few months because it's working.
Thank you. Can you speak to what makes you different? I'm looking at the name of your book, Heart-Centered Marketing, which already is a differentiator. So can you speak to that?
What makes Andrea Pass Public Relations different is I am authentic. I'm honest. And I think that unfortunately, so many people in the PR business get a bad rap. And maybe they should, because they're not getting the job done. They're dilly-dallying. They're not telling you, you are not Wall Street Journal material. I had someone who called me up, I want you to work with me on the Wall Street Journal. And I said, you're not Wall Street Journal material, but I have 15,000 followers on social media. Yes, and you have no engagement. What's your differentiator? Why you? And I think the person got pretty upset. And to this day, this person has not been featured in the Wall Street Journal, nor did they hire me. But my differentiator is I'm going to be honest with you. This is how we're going to get this to happen. But the client has to work because I'm not doing the quotes. The client has to provide the quotes. I don't ever claim to be the expert in that field. And my funny story was years ago, I'm going back many, many years. An attorney I represented wrote a book on capital gains taxes. Okay, this book was so huge. I think I made it through 2 pages. I thought I was reading Swahili. I did not understand capital gains taxes. Now, you, of course, Laura, would understand that. I do not. I am not a financial person. Yet, I was able to talk to the client and craft a pitch that gave 3 or 5 bullet points that were simplistic bullet points that the average person would understand by asking the client. And then I had this client on every TV station imaginable because of the fact that I didn't have to be an expert. I had to be able to be an expert at selling the story. That's where the difference is. And so I'm honest with people. 2 times in the past year, I had people reach out to me for PR who had PR people who weren't doing anything, but they say they're working on it. No, for goodness sakes. You're with them for all these months and there's nothing to show for it. They sent me over a list of some of the things they were pitching. This one PR person was pitching things in the UK. This was a US-based financial client that did not do business in the UK. Why are you wasting an email sending to all of these press in the UK? And I said that to the client. I said, these are UK-based media outlets. They are? I said, yeah. How did you know that? I said, the email address says .uk, and then I look them up. I'm not so brilliant. It wasn't rocket science. But these clients worked with PR people that took their money every month and didn't do anything. And they didn't stop it. The clients didn't stop it. For me, you're going to stick with me. Maybe you're going to extend with me because stuff is happening. I'm making sure things are happening, and I'm honest and authentic about what can be achieved, what can't be achieved.
So I'm wondering, as women are listening, we have several entrepreneurs, I'm sure, who listen to the show, and they're listening to you, Andrea, and saying, I could use her help. What would you want them to know, and what's the best way to reach out to you?
Well, I think first and foremost, don't start public relations unless you're ready. You need a website that is updated, and you need active social media. Journalists today want to know that they can tag you on social because those journalists want to get recognition with your audience as well. So you need to have those things lined up and ready to go before you hire a public relations person. But if you're thinking of hiring a public relations person and you want to chat with me, please visit AndreaPassPR.com and click on my appointments tab and schedule an appointment. Please note that you heard me on Laura's show so that I know how we came to each other. And let's talk. However, I do charge for my services. So I am not looking to connect with people who say, oh, but I don't have the funds. Can you do pro bono? I am not at this time taking any pro bono clients. I am taking paid clients who are willing to make a 6-month minimum commitment. And I'm always up to talking. If any of your listeners have a networking group that they're looking for a speaker, I'm always up to speaking, especially about the difference between public relations and advertising, because it's so confusing. And that's one of my talks. My other talk is about networking is PR and why PR is networking.
Oh, I love that.
Are you networking the right way? There is a right way that's a public relations way to network.
I'm curious to learn more.
Yeah, so it's very interesting, but reach out at AndreaPassPR.com on Facebook, Andrea Pass Public Relations, on LinkedIn, Andrea Pass.
And I will include all of that in the show notes, so you don't have to furiously write it down now. And really love learning about how you came to have your own firm. And I can just tell from the way you smile and talk about it, Andrea, that you really are living your mission.
Indeed. I love it.
Thank you so much for being my guest. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Andrea Pass, owner of Andrea Pass Public Relations. Like me, Andrea caters her services to the unique needs of each of her clients. Some of my takeaways from our conversation: figure out what gets you excited and do it. Andrea was drawn to public relations work by the relationships. She loves getting to know journalists and figuring out how to have her clients featured in their media outlets. Andrea believes that people listen more when someone else talks about you. She gets excited when a press placement comes out, and it's because of her. My second takeaway: consider if the requirements of the role are skills you possess and enjoy using. Part of the excitement for Andrea of the work she does is playing the role of a private investigator, researching and learning about media outlets that cover different industries and getting them interested in her subject line. Andrea quotes, "If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life," because she loves what she does. And finally, identify what's different about you or your business when crafting a pitch for a media outlet. Can you identify what makes you stand out from others in the same business? What differentiates you from them? Andrea works with her clients to uncover what makes them unique and therefore why a journalist would want to cover their story as distinct from others in their industry. If this has struck a chord with you and you want to investigate how you can finance the next stage in your life, please don't hesitate to reach out and schedule a call. And if you're enjoying this podcast, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next episode. And a rating and review would be greatly appreciated and will help others just like you to find it. Thank you, so much.
Thanks for listening to Making Change with Your Money. Certified financial planner Laura Rotter specializes in helping people just like you organize, clarify, and invest their money in order to support a life of purpose and meaning. Go to www.trueabundanceadvisors.com/workbook for a free resource to help you on your journey. Disclaimer, please remember that the information shared by this podcast does not constitute accounting, legal, tax, investment, or financial advice. It's for information purposes only. You should seek appropriate professional advice for your specific information.